Welcome back. Now, workplace wellness is more than just a buzzword. It's a critical part of building healthier, safer, and more productive environments. Now, with increasing awareness around mental health and suicide prevention, it's essential that both employers and employees understand the vital role they play in creating a culture of care. Early intervention, empathy, and communication can truly make a difference in saving lives. Joining us this morning to explore how important this conversation is Tamia Diergaardt, who is a psychological counselor who specializes in workplace mental health and emotional well-being. Thank you so much, ma'am, for making time to speak to us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Let's talk about workplace wellness. Why is it such an important or vital part of suicide prevention and overall mental health, especially in today's high-pressure work environment, which also shows that especially the Gen Z generation seems to be struggling with keeping up with the pace in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing is that we spend so much of our life at work, and our workplaces can either be a place that trains us, or it can be a place where our well-being truly matters. And employees and colleagues have such an important role to play, especially in creating that environment where it's more conducive to work. And when an environment is more conducive, the productivity rates increases. And it's important to check in constantly in the workload, checking in on their well-being, checking in on where are their limits. And I think especially in a mentally healthy workplace or that sort of atmosphere, it's important to establish workloads that are normal, and not normal in terms of ignoring everything else that needs to be done, realistic in terms of what are the limits of people. Like you also just mentioned, Gen Z are struggling with that, but it also has a lot to do with management, how they manage their time and the support that the company offers in their own capacity. So that's why it's quite important that mentally healthy workplaces are introduced, especially in our society. How it also looks like a mentally healthy workplace is where people feel seen, where they feel supported, not just for what they can produce, but simply as human beings. So I think that's why it's quite important.
Quite important. Now, let's talk about how leaders and managers can identify early warning signs that employees may be experiencing mental health challenge or they're in emotional distress. Are there some cues that one can be able to see even if the employee says nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. Often, as we know, people won't come right out and saying that they're struggling. So it's important for employers, for managers, for CEOs to pay attention to any changes in behaviors. This can look like someone who might be outgoing, they might start to withdraw. Someone who was once expressive or talkative, starting to become quiet and isolating themselves, staying in one part of the office. Little things like that, it's important to take note of. More sick days, putting in more sick days, arriving late at the office, slipping performances, a drop in productivity levels. These are all signs to look out for, and it can also show up in emotional changes as well. Irritability, increasing irritability, tearfulness, anger or stress, looking anxious, or looking exhausted. And even subtle signs like losing focus or losing motivation. It's a red flag that that we need to be on the checkout for. And these are the moments that call not only for criticism or anything that we can do to rectify, but it calls for compassion. It calls for employers to approach it with empathy and understanding. Yeah.
Are there simple steps? You talked about this common behavioral and emotional, physical signs that could indicate that employee could be stressed, obviously, but with that at the same time, are there everyday actions that managers can take to promote some sort of, psychological safety and emotional support within their team? I know most possibly some leaders might not want to be seen weak. They might not want to be seen holding an employee who's crying or is in distress, shedding a tear with them. What can they do?
Like we mentioned in the beginning of the thing, it's cultivating that culture of care, of true care. And that's the biggest thing that a company can do. where also asking for help is seen as a strength, not something that's a weakness. This is also about leaders being more open, just about the topic of mental health, being more vulnerable, but also to a certain extent, of course. Speaking about wellness as part of the workplace life every day. For example, providing support services, confidential support services like EAPs. So these are employee assistant programs. This is where companies specifically provide confidential support services to help employees deal with any personal or work-related challenges that they might be facing that might impact their well-being and their performance as well. And these support services can go hand in hand with support for stress management, trauma, abuse, any type of those issues that people might face. These EAPs, they provide free or access to free or subsidized counseling services. It also provides legal and financial advice, or also referrals to mental health professionals. And something else that we also noticed is that when you train managers or people who are in a place of authority, when you train them into addressing something with empathy and understanding, because they are the first line of response when an employee is struggling in the workplace. For something else also that we also noticed is having things like anonymous helplines or having suggestion boxes in the office. Those are little things, because the more safe entry points that you create, the more people are likely to use them. Yeah.
Now, talking about the options that are available to employees, what can employees, especially from a mental health perspective, what can they do to manage stress and protect, their well-being at the workplace? I mean, workplaces are so complex. It could be that you find those who are genuinely, kind people. You could find those that are possibly highly toxic. It could be that you are working in a division or a department that's quite smooth, and then when you have to interact with some other division that you must interact on a daily basis, they're toxic, So what then do you do as an employee to protect your well-being and the peace at the office?
Absolutely. So like we mentioned also before, talking about it openly, taking it up with HR, talking to a counselor, in-house counselor. It's important to take it up with them within the company themselves. What the employee themselves can do in their own capacity is seek for help, because it's not a weakness. Making sure that you take care of yourself in every aspect, because it does play a pivotal role in how you bring yourself forth in the workplace. Making sure that you don't take work home. This is just little things that employees can try. Not taking work home after 5 or after 6, that is my knock-off time. You make sure that you do practice self-care. You make sure that you do have a balance in every area of your life, because there are about 8 aspects of our lives in the wellness wheel that we also do talk about a lot. Making sure that there's a balance of that, making sure that there's rest, and making sure that you provide your body with every nutrition that you have, because that plays also a huge role in your health and your mental well-being overall. So those are just little things that employees can do to help that.
That's fostering an open communication, which you also talked about, and obviously judgment-free communication also contributes to workplace wellness and prevent mental health crisis. How important is that? And perhaps for managers that might be watching right now thinking, how do I do that? Maybe it's not existing in the workplace. Where do they start if they want to improve that kind of workplace atmosphere that is open for communication, free in terms of judgment? It's an open space where people can be able to start possibly expressing themselves if it's not present in their workplace.
Absolutely. I think also it's important for managers to educate themselves. We call it psychoeducation. Looking at the importance of what role does mental health play specifically in the workplace. Like I also mentioned before, it's important that the managers or the people in places of authority also talk about mental health, talking about what they're experiencing. Of course, still withholding that certain level of not sharing too much personal information in the work setting. But there's a thing that we usually do is we sit in a circle and our manager would say, okay, so today we're going to talk about what we're doing. We're gonna check in on one another. How is your workload? How are you managing that? And they would maybe also share something. I've been feeling quite fatigued. these are little things that you can do to open up that conversation, you know, genuinely sharing that care that you have for your employees. And like I said, educating themselves and approaching, when you see as a manager, you see that your employee is struggling a bit, you see that they're not taking lunch, you see that they have more sick leaves, you see, because of course a manager can pick these things up. You can approach the individual, you can approach your employee and say, hi, I've noticed a change, I've noticed that you don't see yourself. That also shows the employee that they really are cared for in the workplace. So these are little things that managers specifically can do to show that they are open to talking to their employees about mental health.
Before we conclude our conversation this morning, is there anything that you want to share before we let you go this morning?
Absolutely. The importance about a workplace is that the workplace plays a key pivotal role in someone's life, in an individual's life who works there. And the important thing about that is when we create a culture of care, it stimulates that conversation where these conversations can start saving lives according to the little things that we can do, supporting one another, asking one another, do you need anything? And these environments create a culture where people don't just survive, but they actually thrive and they actually grow. Yeah, so workplace wellness is quite an important topic, and I hope that those watching today can actually apply it in their work environments.
Quite very much important. Tamia Diergaardt, thank you so much for making time to speak to us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.